4:30 a.m. on Valentine's Day. While other wives were dreaming of roses, Sarah Miller was awakened by a cruel gift. A graphic video of her own husband and his beautiful young mistress, accompanied by a taunting message, "You're old news. Time to retire." But Sarah didn't cry, nor did she bother with a screaming match. She chose a far more devastating stage for her response. The company's live-streamed morning news broadcast delivered to the entire executive board and staff with the cold push of a button. She would turn their Valentine's Day into the day of reckoning for her cheating husband and his shameless lover, making them lose their careers and reputations in a single, brutal instant. Welcome to the earthquake. Live on the real-life romance channel. 4:30 a.m. The harsh buzz of a text message ripped through the quiet of the pre-dawn mist hanging over Burlington, Vermont. It wasn't a sweet nothing, nor was it a notification for flowers or chocolates. Glowing on the phone screen in the darkness was a message from an unknown number, attached to a video file exactly 1 minute and 30 seconds long. Sarah's hand trembled as she pressed play. What hit her wasn't some romantic movie clip, but the all-too-familiar bare back of the man she had shared a bed with for the last 5 years. The sound of panting, the giggles of a strange woman, each note was a shard of ice twisting in her heart. A voice cooed, "Is Sarah awake yet, honey? Or is the old lady still dreaming of her happy little life?" The sky over Burlington on a February morning still held the cutting cold unique to a New England winter. A thick fog rolled off Lake Champlain, creeping through the small city streets and pressing its icy breath against the tightly sealed window panes. Today was Valentine's Day. Sarah woke up before her alarm, a professional habit ingrained in her as a news producer and head of content at North Star Media. She instinctively reached a hand to the other side of the bed, searching for warmth, but her slender fingers met only the cold, eerily smooth sheets of an empty space. Mark, her husband, hadn't come home again last night. The excuse he'd given was, as always, flawlessly reasonable. "I have to entertain clients in Stowe with the CEO. The ecotourism project is in its final phase, honey. Please understand." Sarah sighed, her breath a small white cloud that vanished in the chilly air. She sat up, tucking a stray lock of hair behind her ear, trying to suppress the unease that had been growing inside her for months. She tried to calm herself with the logic of an understanding wife. A man focused on his career is a good thing. I shouldn't be so suspicious. Everything Mark does is for our future, for the child we plan to have this year. She reached for her phone to turn off the alarm set to ring in 5 minutes. As the screen lit up, the first thing she saw wasn't their radiant wedding photo, but a notification from WhatsApp. The sender was named Your Replacement, and the avatar was a mysterious black rose. Sarah frowned. Who would be texting at this hour? It must be a wrong number or spam. But a woman's intuition, that painfully sharp sixth sense, told her this was no mistake. She slid the screen to unlock it. A short, brutal text message appeared. "Happy Valentine's Day, big sister. Your husband asked me to send your gift early. He's exhausted." Right below it was a video. The thumbnail was a shot of a hotel room, bathed in a soft, yellow light. On the bed, a man was sleeping soundly, one arm thrown across his forehead. The Rolex with the metal band on his wrist, the 3rd anniversary gift Sarah had saved 6 months of her salary to buy him, glinted mockingly. Sarah's heart stopped, then plummeted into an abyss. She felt the blood freeze in her veins, her chest squeezed by an invisible hand, making it impossible to breathe. With hands shaking so violently she almost dropped the phone, she pressed play. The clip began with the giggling of the person filming. The camera shook slightly as it moved closer to the bed. Mark's face came into clear view. He was asleep, his chest rising and falling rhythmically, a thin sheet draped carelessly over him. The voice of the woman holding the phone rang out, sugary sweet but laced with venom. "Sweetheart, wake up and wish your wife a happy Valentine's Day." "Oh, wait, she's probably up already, ironing your shirts for work, right? The poor thing. She takes such good care of you, and you run off to be with me." The camera panned to the floor, where Mark's clothes were scattered in a heap with pieces of fiery red lingerie. Then, the lens turned back toward a full-length mirror. A very young woman, with a sharp face and upturned cat-like eyes, was wearing nothing but Mark's white dress shirt. She held a glass of red wine and smiled defiantly. "Sarah," she purred, "your husband is amazing, but he says being with you is so boring. You're old news, time to retire. Let me take care of him for you." The clip ended with the woman blowing a kiss at the camera. The phone dropped onto the mattress with a soft thud. Sarah sat frozen. There were no screams, no flood of tears. The pain was so immense it had numbed her senses. She felt like she was watching someone else's horror movie, not her own life. Mark had cheated on her. Not only that, he had let his mistress film a video to humiliate her on Valentine's Day. 5 years of her youth, 5 years of sacrificing everything, giving up a fellowship in New York City to move to Burlington and build a home with him. 5 years of standing in his shadow, using her connections and her skills as a producer to help him climb from a junior salesman to the associate director of public relations. "So boring?" Sarah whispered, her voice hoarse and unrecognizable. She looked in the mirror. Reflected back was a 29-year-old woman. Even without makeup, her features were sharp and elegant, though her eyes were shadowed with the fatigue of long nights spent editing scripts. She had never thought of herself as old until she heard that word from the other girl's lips. A wave of nausea hit her. Sarah ran to the bathroom and retched, her stomach empty. She splashed cold water on her face, again and again, until her skin was numb and red. "Snap out of it, Sarah. You cannot fall apart now." She stared at her drenched reflection in the mirror and spoke through clenched teeth. The clock showed 5 a.m. In 2 hours, the company's internal morning news broadcast would go live. The program that, ironically, featured a special segment today called Messages of Love. A wild, audacious idea sparked in Sarah's mind. It blazed like a wildfire through the ashes of her shattered trust. If they wanted to play dirty, she would show them what a real festival of pain looked like. She returned to the bed and picked up her phone. Her hands still trembled, but this time it wasn't from fear. It was from the rage coiling in her gut, waiting for its moment to strike. She downloaded the video to her phone, saving it in a secret folder titled Project X. Then, she took a deep breath and typed a reply to the unknown number. "Thank you for the gift. I received it. Be sure to watch the company broadcast tonight. I have a return gift for you." After sending it, Sarah blocked the number. She showered, chose the most powerful-looking burgundy pantsuit from her closet, and applied a deep red lipstick, the color of blood and pride. She walked out of her house and steered her red Subaru into the thick Burlington fog. Outside, the local bagel shops and cafes were starting to open, steam rising from their doors. Life went on, and Sarah knew her war had just begun. At the headquarters of North Star Media, a 10-story building standing proudly in the city center, the Valentine's Day atmosphere was in full swing. Heart-shaped balloon clusters and vibrant red roses decorated the lobby. Young women in festive dresses whispered about their evening plans. Sarah walked in, the sound of her heels clicking with a steady, determined rhythm on the marble floor. The security guard nodded to her, a little surprised by her icy demeanor, so different from her usual warm presence. "Morning, Sarah. You look amazing today. I bet Mark has something big planned," a bright-eyed intern chirped as she ran up to greet her. Sarah paused, a faint, humorless smile touching her lips. "Oh, it's big. All right. So big I'm not sure how to thank him." She went straight to the production room, a large space filled with dozens of glowing computer monitors. This was her kingdom, the place where she controlled every piece of information that was broadcast. Today, Sarah was in charge of the final review for the morning show, which was streamed live on the LED screens in the company lobby and on the internal employee Facebook page. It was a corporate culture initiative the CEO was particularly proud of. Just as she sat down, her desk phone rang. It was Mark. Sarah stared at the name on the caller ID, a feeling of disgust rising in her throat. She picked it up, her voice unnervingly calm. "I'm listening." "Hey, honey, are you up? I'm so sorry. I had too much to drink with the clients last night and passed out at the hotel in Stowe." I'm catching a ride back now, probably won't be at the office until around 8. Happy Valentine's Day, my love. Mark's voice was as smooth and sweet as ever. Without that video, Sarah would have believed him completely. It's okay, honey. Work is important, Sarah replied, her right hand idly twirling a pen, her eyes fixed on the program's schedule displayed on her screen. Just get back safely. There are a lot of surprises at the office today. You'll be sorry if you're late. Surprises? What did you plan for me? All right, I'll try to get there soon. Love you. He hung up. Sarah let out a short, bitter laugh. Love you? The words had never sounded so cheap. She opened the script file. The final segment of the show was Messages of Love. The plan was a slideshow of employee couples with their well wishes. Sarah plugged the USB drive containing the precious video into her computer. Her fingers flew across the keyboard. She inserted the clip at the very end of the presentation file, right after the CEO's message. But Sarah was no fool. She knew that if she just played the clip, she would be held responsible for using company property for personal matters and could even be sued. She needed a reason, a plausible excuse to make this look like a technical accident or a public exposé in which she was the unwitting victim. Just then, the production room door swung open. A young woman walked in, the overpowering scent of Chanel perfume preceding her. It was Tiffany Jones, a new employee in the sales department, the same one Mark had championed for the past 3 months, claiming, "This kid has potential, and she's the daughter of a major client." Sarah looked up and immediately recognized her. The silk cream-colored blouse Tiffany was wearing under her blazer was identical to the one Sarah had gifted Mark last month, which he'd claimed was too tight to wear. And more importantly, those upturned, cat-like eyes. It was her, the girl from the video. Seeing Sarah, Tiffany showed no fear or guilt. Instead, she walked closer, her chin tilted in arrogance. "Sarah, I hear you're in charge of the morning broadcast today." "That's right. Is there something you need?" Sarah asked, her eyes never leaving Tiffany's face. "I have this USB," she said, placing a red flash drive on Sarah's desk, a sly curve to her lips. "It has a congratulatory video from the sales department for the executive board. Mark told me to give it to you to insert at the end of the program. He said he wanted to surprise everyone." Sarah looked at the USB drive, then back at Tiffany. A current of electricity shot through her. Mark wanted to add a video? Or was this girl acting on her own? Whatever it was, this was the godsend opportunity Sarah had been waiting for. "Mark asked for this?" Sarah asked again, feigning innocence. "Yes, you know how he is. So busy, but always so thoughtful. Just add it in, okay? And don't watch it beforehand. You'll ruin the surprise." Tiffany winked, a flirtatious gesture identical to the one in the video. Sarah picked up the flash drive. She understood Tiffany's game. She wanted to provoke her, to see if she would dare to do anything. Or perhaps she thought the drive contained a different clip, one meant to publicly humiliate Sarah in a more subtle way. She was arrogant, and arrogance is the tomb of fools. "All right, if it's from Mark and the sales department, I'll make sure it gets in. You can count on it." Sarah smiled, a smile so sharp it made Tiffany flinch for a second before brushing it off. Tiffany turned and walked away, her hips swaying like a snake. She had no idea that Sarah already had a much more perfect plan in mind. Sarah waited until Tiffany was gone, then plugged her USB drive into a secondary computer to check its contents. Just as she suspected, it contained a slideshow of the sales team set to cheesy music, wishing everyone a happy Valentine's Day. But at the 30-second mark, a picture of Mark and Tiffany was inserted. They were standing close, his hand resting casually on her waist. To a casual observer, it looked like a photo of colleagues, but a closer look revealed their overly intimate gaze. She wanted to tease Sarah with this on the company-wide broadcast? A childish prank. Sarah pulled out the USB. She wasn't going to use this file. She was going to use her own that 1-minute, 30-second video. But she would rename her file to match the one on Tiffany's drive exactly. Sales Dept, Congrats, MP4. And most importantly, she would leave a digital footprint showing that this file was copied from the very USB drive Tiffany had just given her. One stone, two birds. She would expose the adulterous pair and pin the blame squarely on the mistress. The story would be that the mistress, either out of jealousy or sheer stupidity, had sent the wrong file. Sarah looked at the clock. 6:45 a.m. The company lobby was starting to fill up. People were gathering in front of the large LED screen, waiting for the broadcast and the prize drawing. Daniel Evans, the head of IT, a quiet, serious man, walked into the production room. He saw Sarah sitting motionless in front of her monitor, her face pale but her eyes burning with a frightening intensity. "Sarah, is everything okay?" "We're about to go live," Daniel asked, his voice a low baritone. He was the only person in the company Sarah felt she could trust on a professional level, though they rarely spoke about their personal lives. Sarah looked up at him. For a fleeting moment, she wanted to tell him everything, to find a shoulder to lean on. But her reason stopped her. This was her battle to fight alone. "It's fine, Daniel." "Better than fine," Sarah replied, her voice firm. "Today will be the most memorable broadcast in North Star Media's history." Daniel frowned, sensing something unusual in her words, but he didn't press further. "All right. I'll be in the main control room. Let me know if you need anything." 7 a.m. The broadcast jingle played over the giant LED screen in the lobby. The smiling face of the host appeared. "Good morning, North Star Media family. Wishing everyone a Valentine's Day filled with happiness and love." Sarah sat in the control room, her hand on the keyboard. Her heart was pounding so hard she felt her chest might explode, but her hand was perfectly steady. She glanced at the security camera feed from the lobby. Mark had arrived. He was standing in the middle of the crowd, holding a large bouquet of red roses, probably preparing for a public display of affection. Not far from him, Tiffany stood, casting flirtatious glances his way, a smug look on her face. They were both smiling, smiles that were about to be wiped off their faces forever. The program moved through its segments, company news, employee recognition, everything went smoothly. Then came the final part. The host announced excitedly. "And now, a special surprise from our sales department, a unique message of love for our leadership and the entire company." Sarah took a deep breath. She closed her eyes for a second. Images of 5 years of sacrifice, of cold dinners waiting for him, of Mark's blatant lies flashed before her eyes like a movie in slow motion. "It's over, Mark," she whispered, and pressed the enter key. The signal went out. On the 200-inch LED screen in the middle of the lobby, the image changed. It wasn't a cheerful slideshow. The screen went black for 2 seconds, then suddenly lit up with the sickly yellow light of a hotel room. The audio was activated at maximum volume. "Sweetheart, wake up and wish your wife a happy Valentine's Day." The bustling lobby fell instantly, deathly silent. Hundreds of pairs of eyes shot toward the screen. Mark, who had been adjusting his tie, froze, the smile still plastered on his face. Tiffany, holding a cup of coffee, began to tremble uncontrollably. Sarah sat back in her chair in the control room, arms crossed, her eyes like ice as she watched the monitor. The game had begun. The air in the grand lobby of North Star Media seemed to have been sucked out in an instant. All the noise, the cheerful chatter, the soft background music, it all vanished, replaced by the raw, filthy sounds blasting from the high-end speaker system. "Sweetheart, wake up and wish your wife a happy Valentine's Day." Tiffany's sickly sweet voice echoed off the marble walls, striking the eardrums of the more than 200 employees present. On the giant LED screen, the image was brutally sharp. Mark's bare back, the small mole just below his neck that Sarah used to kiss, was now on full display for the world to see. The camera shook as it panned down to the red lingerie scattered on the hotel floor, then swung back to Tiffany's smug face in the mirror. "You're old news. Time to retire. Let me take care of him for you." The line was punctuated with a blown kiss, and then the screen froze on that frame, Tiffany's jeering face next to Mark's, sleeping like the dead. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. A mortal silence blanketed the room. It felt as if time in Burlington had literally frozen over. Then, Chaos erupted. Whispers started like a disturbed beehive, quickly growing into gasps and shouts of disbelief. Hundreds of phones were raised in unison. The primal instinct to witness and record drama took over. Live streams, Instagram stories, screenshots, it all happened in a flash. At the center of the storm, Mark stood rooted to the spot. The bouquet of 99 red roses, the one he'd spent a fortune on to stage his perfect husband act, slowly slipped from his numb fingers. Thump! The bouquet hit the marble floor. The crimson petals scattered, crushed under his polished leather shoes, looking like spreading bloodstains. Mark's face went from red to purple, then to a bloodless white. His eyes were wide, staring at the screen as if he were seeing a ghost. He wanted to scream, to tell them to turn it off, but his throat felt like it was filled with molten lead. Not far away, Tiffany was living her own worst nightmare. The coffee cup fell from her hand and shattered, splashing the brown, milky liquid all over her designer dress and bare legs. But she didn't seem to notice. She looked up at the screen, then at the faces around her. The admiring glances she'd received moments before had turned into sharp daggers of contempt, mockery, and judgment. "Oh my God, isn't that Tiffany from sales? That's her! Look at the mole under her eye. Disgusting. And that's Mark's watch. His wife is Sarah from production, you know. The nerve of this girl, sending a video to taunt the actual wife." The whispers reached Tiffany's ears, loud and clear. She trembled, covering her face with her hands, and stumbled backward into a male colleague who quickly dodged away as if she were contagious. Just then, a powerful voice thundered from the mezzanine. "Turn it off. Turn that filth off right now. Security." It was Mr. Henderson, the CEO. He had just returned from a meeting and walked into the lobby right at the video's climax. His face was beet red with fury. A major media company, the biggest in the state, allowing such a depraved scandal to unfold in its main lobby on a holiday. This was an indelible humiliation. The LED screen snapped to black, but the image was already seared into everyone's retinas. More importantly, it was saved on hundreds of phones. From the control room, Sarah walked out slowly. She had taken off her blazer, wearing just a simple white shirt tucked neatly into black trousers, accentuating her slender but straight posture. Her makeup was subtle, but her eyes were wide with shock and panic, an Oscar-worthy performance. She walked unsteadily, as if all her strength had been drained, heading toward Mark. "Mark," Sarah called out, her voice trembling, broken, and thick with emotion. "What? What is that? Tell me, what is that?" Mark snapped back to reality. Seeing his wife, the last shred of his reason kicked in. The survival instinct of a chronic liar urged him to deny, to explain, even with the evidence laid bare. "Sarah, listen to me. It's not what you think. It's a deepfake. It's edited. The AI technology now is terrifying. Someone is trying to frame me." Mark lunged forward, trying to grab Sarah's hand, but she took a step back. The look of utter revulsion in her eyes made him freeze. "Edited?" Sarah laughed, a twisted, painful smile. "Do you think I'm an idiot? The watch I gave you for our 3rd anniversary? The scar on your back from your bike accident last year? Who could possibly fake those things, Mark?" She pointed a trembling finger at Tiffany, who was cowering in a corner. "And her, that voice, that face. Are you going to say that's fake too?" All eyes turned to Tiffany. Pointed out, Tiffany reacted like a cornered animal. She suddenly shrieked, pointing directly at Sarah. "It was you! You did this! You planned this whole thing! You set me up! You want to destroy me!" The crowd gasped. The plot twist of the mistress accusing the wife made the drama even more intense. Sarah's eyes widened in feigned astonishment. She clutched her chest, her voice filled with anguish. "What are you talking about? I set you up? This morning, you were the one who came into the production room and gave me this red USB drive, telling me it was a surprise from Mark and the sales department. You told me to insert it at the end of the show and not to watch it beforehand to keep it a secret." Sarah pulled the bright red USB drive from her pocket. She held it high for everyone to see. "Here! The evidence is right here. The security cameras in the production room surely recorded you giving this to me." I trusted my husband, I trusted a colleague, so I did as I was told. I never imagined that inside this congratulatory gift you would hide such filth to humiliate me and our company." Sarah's voice rose to a scream on the last sentence, and tears began to stream down her face. But behind those tears was a steely logic that left Tiffany speechless. The USB was from Tiffany. She was the person in the video. There was no plausible reason for Sarah to broadcast her own husband's affair and humiliate herself in front of the entire company. In everyone's eyes now, Sarah was just a pitiful victim, played by her husband's mistress. "That witch!" a voice yelled, followed by a sharp smack. Mark, in a frenzy of fear over losing his job and reputation, had lunged forward and slapped Tiffany across the face. The slap was so hard it sent her stumbling to the floor, blood trickling from the corner of her mouth. "You ruined me," he roared, completely forgetting his usual suave persona. "I told you to delete that. Why did you give it to my wife? Are you insane?" Tiffany held her cheek, looking up at her lover with shattered eyes. The man who had whispered sweet nothings to her just last night, promising to leave his wife for her, was now hitting her in public to save his own skin. "You hit me? You dare hit me?" Tiffany shrieked, clawing at him. "You told me to film it. You said it was for memories. You said your wife was like a block of wood and you were sick of her. And now you're blaming it all on me?" The scene was unprecedented chaos. The associate director of PR and a sales associate were physically fighting in the company lobby, surrounded by the wreckage of crushed roses. Security guards rushed in, struggling to pull them apart. "Everyone, up to the conference room. Now. That includes you, Sarah," CEO Henderson commanded, his voice trembling with rage. He turned to the crowd of employees. "Anyone still filming? You're fired. Disperse. Get back to work." The crowd scattered, but the whispers were unstoppable. A tsunami of gossip was already spreading from North Star Media throughout the small city of Burlington. In the 10th floor conference room, the air was suffocating, stretched as taut as a violin string about to snap. Mr. Henderson sat at the head of the table, his hands slamming down on the polished wood. Next to him were the head of HR and Daniel Evans, the head of IT. Mark sat with his head bowed, his hair disheveled, red scratch marks visible on his neck from Tiffany's nails. Tiffany sat opposite him, sobbing, her smeared makeup making her look like a tragic clown. Sarah sat apart in a corner, her back ramrod straight. She had dried her tears, returning to a frighteningly calm state. She knew the emotional drama was over. Now it was time to use logic to finish her opponents. "Will someone explain this to me?" Mr. Henderson bellowed. "Where did that video come from? Why was it on our internal broadcast system?" "Sir, it was her," Mark stammered, pointing at Tiffany. "She set me up. I was drunk. I didn't know anything. She filmed it secretly and then gave it to my wife on purpose." "You're lying!" Tiffany screamed. "You weren't drunk. You were perfectly sober. You even posed for me. And yes, I gave Sarah the USB, but I swear I only copied the congratulatory slideshow. I don't know how it turned into that video." Tiffany turned to glare at Sarah, her eyes full of hatred. "It was you. You must have swapped the file. You're the tech expert. You could do it." All eyes turned to Sarah. Sarah slowly stood up, not rushing to defend herself. She walked to the front and placed the red USB on the table before Mr. Henderson. "Mr. Henderson, may I speak?" Her voice was calm and clear. "This morning, Miss Jones gave me this USB, which was witnessed by security cameras. I plugged it into my computer and saw a file named salesdept congrats.mp4 because I trusted that the content was approved by Mark, as Miss Jones claimed, and because time was short, I moved it directly into the broadcast playlist." She turned to look at Daniel Evans, a silent signal passing between them. "Daniel is the head of IT. He can check the log files on my computer to see if that file was indeed copied from this USB and if any edits were made." Daniel pushed up his glasses and looked at Sarah. As a tech expert, a single glance told him that something had been manipulated. Swapping the content of a video file while keeping the name was not difficult for someone with Sarah's skills. But he also saw the deeply repressed pain in her eyes. He had witnessed her dedication to the company and had long heard whispers of Mark's philandering. In a moment of conscience and empathy, Daniel chose a side. He plugged the USB into his laptop, typed a few commands, then looked up, his voice steady. "Mr. Henderson, according to the system log, the video file broadcast at 7:15 a.m. was copied directly from this USB at 6:52 a.m. The file name matches, the file size is consistent, and there are no signs of editing or alteration on Miss Miller's workstation." Daniel's words were the final nail in Tiffany's coffin. "Impossible! You're lying! You're all covering for each other!" Tiffany screamed in desperation. "Silence!" Mr. Henderson slammed the table. "The evidence is right there, and you still deny it? You brought a USB containing obscene material, a video of an affair with your superior, and had it broadcast in the workplace. Are you trying to destroy this company?" He turned to Mark, his eyes filled with disappointment. "And you, Mark, I promoted you to associate director because I thought you were capable and had a stable family life. I never imagined you'd be so depraved. Taking an employee on a business trip to conduct an affair, letting a video leak that severely damages our company's image. Do you have any idea how many calls I've gotten from our partners this morning?" Mark slid from his chair and fell to his knees. "Sir, please forgive me, sir. I was wrong. It was a moment of weakness. I'll handle it quietly." "Handle it? How are you going to handle it when the entire city of Burlington is sharing this clip?" Mr. Henderson scoffed. "HR, draft a termination letter for Tiffany Jones immediately for gross violation of the company's code of conduct and moral ethics. As for you, Mark, you are suspended indefinitely. The board will review the extent of the brand damage and determine the official termination and compensation claims." "Sir, no!" Tiffany sobbed, trying to grab Mr. Henderson's leg but was dragged out by security. Her wails echoed down the hallway, tragic and pitiful, but no one felt sorry for her. Mark sat slumped on the floor, his face ashen. He looked at Sarah, his eyes pleading. "Honey, say something for me. If I lose this job, I lose everything. What about us?" Sarah looked down at the man kneeling at her feet, the man she once considered her entire world, now just a pathetic pile of ash. She remembered the morning's text. "Your old news. Time to retire." She bent down and whispered in his ear, just loud enough for the two of them to hear, her voice as cold as the wind sweeping off the lake. "Worried about us? Don't be. We will be fine, but not with your filthy money. And remember this, Mark. I was the one who swapped the video. But what are you going to do about it now?" Mark's eyes widened in horror. He realized the woman standing before him was no longer his gentle, submissive wife. He had awakened a demon, and now it was devouring him whole. Sarah stood up straight and turned to Mr. Henderson. "Sir, if you'll excuse me, I'm very tired." Mr. Henderson looked at her with sympathy and nodded. "Go home and rest, Sarah. The company will handle this fairly for you. Don't worry." Sarah bowed and walked out of the conference room. The door closed behind her, shutting out the noise and judgment. She leaned against the wall, her legs suddenly giving way. She sank to the floor, her whole body shaking violently. The extreme stress of playing the perfect victim had completely drained her. She clutched her chest, where her heart was aching with each beat. She had won. She had won this showdown. But why didn't she feel the triumph she had imagined? All she felt was a vast, desolate emptiness. Her family, her 5-year home, was officially shattered from this moment on. "Here, drink some water." A bottle of water was held out in front of her. Sarah looked up. It was Daniel. He had followed her out. Sarah took the bottle, her hands still shaking. "Thank you for what you did back there. Thank you for not—" Daniel sat down next to her, keeping a respectful distance. He looked straight ahead and said casually, "Computers don't lie, but people can choose how to read the data. I just read what was necessary to protect the person who deserved protecting." He turned to look at her, his gaze deep. "But Sarah, by doing this, you've burned your own bridges. Mark is a petty man. When cornered, he'll bite back. You need to be careful." Sarah gripped the water bottle, the plastic crinkling under her fingers. Her eyes slowly regained their resolve. She stood up, straightened her burgundy suit, and smoothed her hair. Bridges? Daniel. From the moment I received that video at 4:30 this morning, I had no bridges left. Now, I only have one path, forward, and I'll crush anyone who gets in my way. She looked at Daniel and gave a small smile, the first genuine one of the day. Thank you. I owe you one. With that, Sarah turned and walked toward the elevator. Her stride was once again strong and proud, like a warrior emerging from battle. She knew the earthquake in the lobby was just the beginning. Mark had lost his job, Tiffany was fired, but they were still out there. More importantly, the legal battle for divorce and the division of assets, as well as the war with public opinion, was just starting. Her phone buzzed incessantly in her pocket. She pulled it out and saw a flood of Facebook notifications. Someone had recorded the lobby incident and posted it to the large Burlington community groups with a sensational headline, "Valentine's Day Meltdown." North Star Media exec's affair exposed on lobby screen by scorned wife. The post had thousands of likes and shares in just 30 minutes. Sarah looked at the screen, a small smirk on her lips. Good, she thought. The louder the noise, the faster your mask of decency shatters, Mark. She stepped into the elevator and pressed the button for the parking garage. Her Subaru was waiting. She needed to go home, pack her things, and prepare for Act 3 of this real-life drama. There, her parents-in-law, who always blindly defended their son, would be waiting for her with words that were anything but kind. The red Subaru Outback rolled slowly into the small cul-de-sac on Maple Street in Burlington's South End. By midday, the fog had mostly burned off, but a stubborn chill still clung to the air. Yet, the cold of the weather was nothing compared to the frost emanating from the handsome 3-story house at the end of the street, the place Sarah had called home for 5 years. The front gate was wide open. The silence was unnerving. Sarah killed the engine and sat in the driver's seat for a few moments, composing herself. She glanced in the rearview mirror, touched up her foundation, and reapplied her red lipstick. At this moment, lipstick wasn't just makeup, it was armor, a weapon to hide the tremor in her lips. You can do this, Sarah. You did nothing wrong. They did, she told herself, took a deep breath, and got out of the car. The first thing she saw as she walked up the driveway was a pile of her clothes, books, and makeup strewn across the brick patio. Her favorite dresses were balled up and dirty, the covers of her professional textbooks torn. Sarah smirked. This childish, pathetic act could only be the work of her mother-in-law, Helen. She stepped over the messy pile as if it were trash and walked straight into the living room. Inside, the atmosphere was as oppressive as a funeral. Her father-in-law, George, sat on the sofa, puffing furiously on a pipe, the thick smoke hanging in the air. Helen sat beside him, dabbing her eyes with a handkerchief, but her gaze was as sharp as a blade when she saw Sarah enter. Well, well, look who dares to show her face in this house, you shameless, home-wrecking witch, Helen shrieked, her voice shrill and piercing. Sarah stood in the middle of the room, neither sitting nor bowing her head. She looked directly at her mother-in-law, her voice unnervingly calm. Hello, George. Helen. I'm here to get the rest of my things. As for who is shameless and who is a homewrecker, I think you should watch the video of your son that's currently going viral all over social media. You dare talk back to me? Helen shot up from the sofa and lunged, her hand raised to slap Sarah. But Sarah was no longer the submissive daughter-in-law of yesterday. She raised her own hand, blocking Helen's arm in midair. She didn't grip it tightly, but the force was enough to make Helen stumble back. Calm down, Helen. You'll only hurt your hand. Besides, I'm not a doormat for you to wipe your feet on anymore. Helen froze, staring at Sarah as if she were an alien. For 5 years, Sarah had been the daughter-in-law who was always polite, hard-working, and even a bit of a pushover. Helen had criticized her for not having a son yet, even though they had just started trying and Sarah had only smiled. But today, she dared to block her hand, to look her in the eye with such a cold, sharp gaze. George, do something, Helen cried, turning to her husband for support. But George remained silent, only letting out a long, weary sigh. You've ruined my son. You've ruined this entire family." Helen switched to a dramatic wail. "So Mark made a little mistake. You should have handled it privately. Boys will be boys. He may have had a little fun on the side, but he still brought his paycheck home to you. Instead, you aired our dirty laundry for the whole world to see. Now he's lost his job, his reputation is gone. Are you happy now?" Sarah felt a bitter taste rise in her throat, the classic boys will be boys excuse from a mother who blindly adored her son. She'd seen it in movies, but never thought she'd experience it firsthand. "That's quite a take, Helen," Sarah said with a sad smile. "That kind of thinking belongs in the last century. This is the 21st century, and the law is one man, one woman. Your son didn't just cheat. He allowed his mistress to film a video humiliating me and sent it to me at 4:30 this morning. Do you have any idea what that feels like? Or do you only care about your precious son's tattered reputation?" She pulled out her phone, opened the message from Tiffany, and held it in front of Helen's face. "Look, your old news. Time to retire. This is the kind of woman your son is spending his time with. He used our joint savings to buy her designer bags and watches, while the washing machine in this house has been broken for 3 months and he couldn't be bothered to fix it. And you're telling me to endure this? To let them walk all over me?" Helen glanced at the screen, faltering for a moment at the brazen text message, but her maternal instinct to protect her son quickly overrode all reason. "Well, then it's your fault for not knowing how to keep a man. You're as exciting as a log, always focused on work. You come home with a sour face. Mark is a man, he needs sweetness and affection. That other girl is clever, she knows how to please him. It's partly your fault he strayed." Sarah burst out laughing, a sharp, brittle sound filled with contempt. "Yes, my fault for giving up my career in New York to move to this small town and be your daughter-in-law. My fault for using my entire year-end bonus to buy medication for George and new clothes for you. My fault for working overtime to pay off the debt your son racked up when he lost big on sports betting last year. Have you forgotten that so quickly?" At the mention of the gambling debt, George, who had been smoking, started coughing violently. He put down his pipe and looked up at his daughter-in-law with clouded eyes. "That's enough, Sarah. Stop bringing up old scores," George said, his voice raspy. "What's done is done. Mark is in a state right now. As his wife, you should be more forgiving. Go back to the company and set the record straight. Say it was a misunderstanding, that you staged it out of jealousy. Save your husband's career. Then we'll make him apologize and break it off with that girl." Sarah looked at her father-in-law, the disappointment cresting into a tidal wave. So, in their eyes, their son's career and reputation were more important than her dignity. They wanted her to take the fall, to paint herself as a crazy, jealous wife, to whitewash their son's sins. "George, do you really think people are 3-year-olds? Who would believe that explanation?" Sarah shook her head, weary. "And let me make this perfectly clear once and for all. Mark and I are getting a divorce. I've already signed the papers. I will never go back to a cheater." "Divorce!" Helen shrieked. "How dare you! If you walk out of this house, don't expect to take a single penny with you. This house belongs to us. This land belongs to us. You'll leave with nothing." "I don't want this house," Sarah replied, her eyes flashing. "But I will take back what belongs to me. The $50,000 in our joint savings account, which I put aside for our future children. I will get every last cent. And that Subaru outside? It was a gift from my parents. The title is in my name." You... Helen was so furious she could barely speak, pointing a trembling finger at Sarah. Just then, the roar of a motorcycle engine sounded outside. Mark was home. He stormed into the house like a tornado, reeking of alcohol, his clothes a mess, his eyes bloodshot and crazed. The moment he saw Sarah, his rage exploded. "You witch! You still dare to come back here?" Mark grabbed a glass ashtray from the coffee table and hurled it at Sarah. "Crash!" Sarah quickly sidestepped. The ashtray shattered against the wall, sending shards of glass flying. A piece grazed her ankle, drawing blood. "Mark, are you crazy?" George yelled, jumping up to intervene. but Mark had lost all reason. He had just been fired, Tiffany was screaming at him for money, and his friends were texting him jokes and memes. It had all built up into a powder keg, and Sarah was the fuse. "I'll kill you. You ruined me. You swapped the video, didn't you? I know it was you, you venomous snake." Mark lunged at Sarah, grabbing a handful of her hair and trying to slam her head down. Pain shot through Sarah's scalp, but her survival instinct kicked in stronger than ever. She didn't cry or beg. She swung her hand and, with all her might, slapped Mark across the face. Smack! The unexpected blow stunned Mark, and he let go. Sarah scrambled back, grabbing a mop, leaning in the corner and pointing the metal handle at her husband. "You take one more step, and I won't hold back. You think I'm the same weak Sarah you could push around whenever you wanted?" Her voice was a low growl that echoed through the house. Her eyes blazed with a mixture of hatred and absolute resolve. The image of a woman cornered, ready to fight to the death to protect herself, made Mark hesitate. He had never seen his wife like this. You hit your husband," Mark stammered, holding his cheek. "Husband?" Sarah sneered, the mop handle held steady. "The moment you slept with another woman and let her send me that video, you died to me. You're just a pathetic excuse for a man." She turned to her in-laws, who stood frozen in shock. "Look, both of you, this is the golden child you've been protecting. He cheats, he hits his wife, and he's a gambling addict. You can keep him and worship him. I'm leaving." Sarah threw the mop down, its clatter echoing in the tense silence. She turned and walked toward the door, not even glancing at the pile of her clothes on the patio. She didn't need them. A new life required new, clean things. "Stop!" Mark screamed after her. "Where do you think you're going? To shack up with some other guy? Is it that Daniel guy? I saw how he defended you at the office. So that's it. You've been cheating too, so you framed me to make it look legitimate." Sarah stopped on the front steps. A cold wind hit her face, carrying the dampness of a light drizzle that had just begun. She turned her head and looked at Mark one last time. Her eyes held no anger now, only pity. Pity for a complete failure who still tried to drag others down into the mud to feel taller. "Do you think everyone is as dirty as you are?" she said, her voice low and cold. "Daniel is a decent man. He helped me because he saw an injustice. As for you, you can live with your sick, twisted thoughts for the rest of your miserable life. Oh, and one more thing," she added. "That $30,000 loan you took from a loan shark to buy gifts for Tiffany? I found the loan agreement you hid under the liner in your shoe closet. I have pictures of it. If you ever bother me or my family again, I'll send copies to the finance company and the police. Let's see how you get out of that one." All the color drained from Mark's face. His darkest secret, the one he feared most, Sarah had known all along. How long have you known?" "Since you started acting suspicious. I didn't say anything because I wanted to give you a chance to turn back. But you chose to drive straight off a cliff. I'm not going to stop you." With that, Sarah walked to her car, started the engine, and sped away, leaving behind the house full of storms, the man screaming in hopeless rage, and two old people just beginning to realize the true tragedy of their family. Sarah drove without a destination. She followed the road along the shore of Lake Champlain. The water was calm, its surface a dull, melancholic gray under the drizzling sky. The rain started to fall harder, and finally, her tears began to fall too. She sobbed, the sound muffled by the drumming of the rain against the windshield. She was in pain. Of course she was. 5 years of her youth, of love, trust, and hope, all turned to smoke. She had won the battle against the mistress and her in-laws, but who was going to heal the wound in her heart? She pulled over to the side of the road, rested her forehead on the steering wheel, and cried like a child. Her phone rang. Wiping her tears, Sarah glanced at the screen. It was an unknown number, but a very nice one, ending in 8888. She hesitated for a moment, then answered. "Hello?" Her voice was still choked with tears. "Sarah Miller? This is Daniel's attorney, Mr. Davis. I'm representing North Star Media in this matter. CEO Henderson asked me to contact you." "Yes, hello, Mr. Davis. What can I do for you?" Sarah tried to compose herself. Mr. Henderson suggests you take a week of paid leave to stabilize. As for Mark, the company has officially terminated his employment and is preparing to sue him for brand damages. However, the lawyer paused. A legal issue has arisen regarding a joint asset that Mark mortgaged, with the company as a guarantor. Could you meet with me for a moment? This is quite important and directly affects your rights in the divorce. Sarah frowned. A mortgaged joint asset? She didn't remember them ever mortgaging anything. The house belonged to her in-laws. Unless a terrible feeling washed over her. What had Mark done behind her back? Yes, I'll be right there. Where should we meet? The Starbucks across from the office. I'm waiting for you. Sarah hung up. She looked in the rearview mirror. Her eyes were swollen, her mascara slightly smudged. She wiped her face clean and reapplied her lipstick. The war wasn't over. It had just entered a new phase, a war of money and law. Mark wasn't just a cheater. He was an economic parasite, and Sarah knew if she wasn't careful, she would not only lose her husband but also be saddled with a mountain of debt. All right, Mark. If you want to play to the bitter end, so will I. Sarah put the car in drive and sped off into the rain. Meanwhile, in a dingy dive bar, Tiffany sat huddled in a corner, the imprint of Mark's hand still visible on her cheek. Her landlord had just kicked her out, and her bank account had been frozen as part of the company's investigation into fraudulent expense reports she and Mark had colluded on. Tiffany scrolled through the hateful comments about her online, the fury in her eyes burning. Sarah Miller, you pushed me into a corner. You think you've won? If I lose everything, you won't have a peaceful day either. She dialed a number saved in her phone as Sal. Hello? Sal? It's Tiffany. I've got a good tip for you. It's about Mark's wife. She's holding on to about 50 grand in cash. If you want to collect Mark's debt, you should go after her. I'll send you the location of her car. The real storm, a storm of violence and dark schemes, was quietly gathering, heading straight for Sarah just when she thought she had escaped the mire. The Starbucks, situated at the busiest intersection in downtown Burlington across from North Star Media, was a warm refuge from the cold rain. Sarah entered, shaking her wet umbrella. The air conditioning sent a shiver through her, or perhaps it was the unease coiling in her gut. Attorney Davis was in a quiet corner, a thick file on the table before him. Sitting next to him, surprisingly, was Daniel Evans. Sarah stopped short for a second. Why was Daniel here? Hey, have a seat, Daniel said first, his calm voice reassuring. I was the one who asked Mr. Davis to look into your files. Some things involving digital security and the law are connected. I thought you should know. Sarah sat and ordered a hot tea, her hands clasped tightly on the table to hide their trembling. She looked at the two men, sensing the news she was about to receive was not good. Let's get straight to it, Sarah said. Mr. Davis pushed the file toward her, opening it to a page with a stark red seal. Miss Miller, are you aware of this loan? Sarah picked up the paper. It was a loan agreement with a private finance company, a loan shark, operating under a legitimate-looking front. The amount was $100,000. The collateral listed was her Subaru Outback and a down payment on a luxury condo they had planned to invest in last year. The most terrifying part was at the bottom of the page, the signature of Sarah Miller. This, Sarah stared, her voice failing her. I never signed this. The signature looks similar, but it's not mine. I know, Mr. Davis nodded grimly. It's a forgery. 3 months ago, Mark used your personal information and forged your signature to take out this loan. The stated purpose was for a business investment, but our investigation shows the money was wired to various personal accounts to cover gambling debts and luxury purchases. Gambling, Sarah whispered, feeling the ground crumble beneath her. She knew Mark liked to bet, but she never imagined he would go this far. $100,000 was a staggering sum. The problem, Daniel interjected, turning his laptop toward her, is that this contract has a clause. If the borrower defaults or is terminated from their job, the lender has the right to seize the collateral immediately, without a court order. In other words, your car and your savings for the condo are, legally speaking, in their hands. That bastard, Sarah slammed her hand on the table, tears of rage welling in her eyes. He sold me out. He tricked me into signing blank papers tucked into insurance documents, telling me it was a routine update. I trusted him. The foolishness of that trust was the highest price she had ever paid. He had been funding his affair with her sweat and tears, with her entire financial security. So what do I do now? I didn't sign it. Can I sue him for fraud? Sarah asked urgently. You can, Mr. Davis replied. But the process of verifying a forged signature takes time, possibly months. In the meantime, these creditors won't wait. This company belongs to Scarface Sal, a notorious loan shark in this region. They don't operate by the law, they have their own rules. Just then, Sarah's phone buzzed violently. An unknown number. She looked at the screen, then at Daniel. He nodded, signaling for her to answer on speakerphone. Hello? This Sarah? A man's gravelly voice crackled through the speaker. This is Sal. I'm sure you know your husband owes me a pretty penny. I didn't borrow any money from you. The person who borrowed it should be the one to pay it back, Sarah retorted, trying to keep her voice steady. Ha ha, you've got a sharp tongue. But your name and signature are on the dotted line. Your husband is a broke, disgraced loser now. I'm not looking for him. I'm looking for you. I hear you're sitting on 50 grand in cash and driving my car. Bring it to 88 Park Street. Now. Don't make me come find you. It won't be pleasant. I'll call the police. Go ahead. The cops show up, I show them the loan agreement. This is a civil matter. But listen, Sarah, it's a long drive from here to your parents' place in Montpelier. Winding roads, rainy weather. Shame if your car were to break down in the middle of nowhere. The threat was undisguised. He knew where her parents lived. He knew her route. Are you following me? Let's just say a little bird told me where to look. That Tiffany girl said you ruined her life, so she pointed me in your direction. Tsk, tsk. Women can be so cruel to each other. Click. He hung up. Sarah's hand went limp. Tiffany. It was Tiffany again. She didn't just want to steal her husband and her reputation. She wanted to push Sarah to her death, using these thugs as her weapon. They know I was planning to go to Montpelier, Sarah said, her face pale. They're going to block the road. Daniel's jaw tightened. He typed furiously on his keyboard, accessing the company's internal vehicle tracking system. Your car. I suspect Mark planted a GPS tracker on it, and now Tiffany has given Sal access. So I have to abandon the car? No. Daniel stood up, his eyes resolute. If you do, they'll just go to your parents' house. We have to lure the snake out of its hole and deal with it here and now. He turned to Sarah. Do you trust me? Sarah looked at the man before her. He was just a colleague, but in this hurricane, he was the only lifeline she had. I trust you. Good. Here's the plan. 30 minutes later, Sarah's red Subaru Outback pulled out of the downtown parking garage and sped into the rain, heading toward the highway out of the city. Sarah gripped the steering wheel, her knuckles white. The passenger seat was empty, save for her handbag. But she wasn't alone. A formidable black Ford Ranger pickup truck was tailing her discreetly, about 50 yards back. It was Daniel's truck. Through her Bluetooth earpiece, his calm voice was a steady presence. Maintain your speed. I'm right behind you. My dash cam is recording in high definition. Mr. Davis is with me. He's on the phone with the chief of police. I understand, but I'm scared. Don't be. They're just vultures. You're alive, and you're stronger than them. Follow the route. Take the service road behind the stadium. It's deserted, but the city just installed new security cameras there. Sarah swallowed hard and turned the wheel. The service road was empty. On both sides were overgrown, vacant lots. Suddenly, 2 motorcycles, each with 3 riders, burst out of a side alley, their engines screaming as they swerved to block her path. From behind, a beat-up black SUV pulled up close, boxing her in. The trap was sprung. They're here, Daniel! Sarah cried, her heart hammering against her ribs. Stop the car. Lock the doors. Do not, under any circumstances, roll down the window. Start a private live stream and share the link with me and Mr. Davis. Now. Sarah slammed on the brakes. The car skidded on the wet pavement before coming to a halt. Immediately, the thugs jumped off their bikes. The leader was a large, bald man with a long scar running from his eyelid to his chin, Scarface Sal. He strolled up to the driver's side window, tapping it with the baseball bat he was carrying. "Well, hello, pretty lady, get out of the car. Let's have a nice chat," he sneered, revealing a set of tobacco-stained teeth. Sarah sat in the car, aiming her phone's camera directly at his face. She spoke through the thick glass, her voice trembling but firm. "I have nothing to say to you. Get out of my way." "Ooh, a tough one," Sal spat on the ground. "That Tiffany kid said you were something else. Now I believe it. Listen here. Your husband screwed you over, but the money I lent him was real. You don't pay, I smash this car, and then I go have a little talk with your mommy and daddy." He raised the bat threateningly. Inside, Sarah was shaking, primal fear gripping her. But then, the image of Tiffany's smug face and Mark's cowardice flashed in her mind. They wanted to destroy her, to see her terrified and begging. No, she would rather die on her feet than live on her knees. Sarah slammed her hand on the horn. The blare ripped through the rain-soaked air like the cry of a wounded animal fighting back. "Go ahead, smash it," she screamed inside the car. "I'm live streaming. Thousands of people are watching. You touch me, you'll go to jail for a long, long time." Sal hesitated, seeing the phone camera pointed at him. He was a thug, but even he knew to avoid a public scandal that would bring the full force of the law down on him. At that moment, the high beams of the truck behind them flashed on, blinding the thugs. Daniel gunned the engine. The Ford Ranger roared like a beast, charging toward the men surrounding Sarah's car. They scattered. Daniel slammed on his brakes, parking his truck protectively in front of Sarah's Subaru. He stepped out, unarmed, dressed in his neat business casual attire, but the aura of authority he projected completely overpowered the ragtag group of gangsters. "Sal," Daniel said, his voice ice-cold. "Big-time operator like you, reduced to shaking down a woman in broad daylight." Sal squinted, recognizing him. Anyone in Burlington's business community knew Daniel Evans, the tech wizard who managed the cybersecurity for half the major institutions in the state. "Who the hell are you? Looking for trouble?" Sal growled. "I'm Miss Miller's legal counsel, Mr." Davis said, stepping out of the truck, holding his phone. "I'm on a call with Chief Miller of the Burlington Police Department. Would you like to say hello, Sal? I can put him on speaker." Hearing the police chief's name, Sal's face changed. He knew he'd stumbled into a hornet's nest. He'd heard about the scandal at North Star Media, but assumed Sarah was just some abandoned wife with no one to back her up. He never imagined she had this kind of support. "Fine, fine," Sal snarled, lowering the bat. He pointed at Daniel, then at Sarah in the car. "I'll let it go for today. But a debt is a debt. I'll see you in court." "Please do," Daniel shot back. "We're already in the process of getting the forged signature verified. And by the way, tell that Tiffany girl that I have all the evidence of her providing your information and inciting violence. Tell her to get ready for her own set of charges." Sal grunted, signaled to his men, and retreated. The sound of their motorcycles faded, leaving the deserted road in silence. Only when they were gone did Sarah dare to open her car door. Her legs gave out, and she collapsed onto the wet pavement, the tears she'd been holding back finally bursting forth. "Sarah!" Daniel rushed to her side, helping her up. Sarah clung to his arm, sobbing uncontrollably. All the strength she had built up since the morning shattered in his presence. They were going to kill me. Why? What did I do wrong? Why would they treat me like this? Daniel said nothing, just gently patted her back, letting her release all her fear and pain. He understood. This was her at her most vulnerable and at her most human. "You did nothing wrong," Daniel said softly, his deep voice a comforting presence in the rain. "You just chose the wrong person to trust. But it's over now. I'm here. No one is going to hurt you again." His words, spoken in the freezing Vermont rain, were like a small flame, warming Sarah's dying heart. From inside the truck, Mr. Davis watched them and sighed. He knew the legal fight ahead would be tough, but seeing the way Daniel protected Sarah, he had a feeling this woman would not be defeated. That night, Sarah didn't drive to her parents' house. Daniel took her to a high-end condominium in a new, secure development. "This is one of my investment properties. You can stay here for now. I've changed the security code. It has all the basics," Daniel said, placing a keycard on the counter. "My parents live just a few blocks away. Call me if you need anything." Sarah sat on the sofa, nursing a cup of hot milk. She looked around the unfamiliar but cozy apartment, an overwhelming sense of gratitude welling up inside her. "Why are you being so kind to me?" she asked, looking at him intently. "I'm just a colleague, and I'm caught up in a huge scandal." Daniel stood by the window, looking out at the city lights. He was silent for a long moment before turning back to her, his gaze sincere. "Because 3 years ago, when I first joined the company, everyone avoided me because I was too blunt and serious. You were the only one who shared your lunch with me and gave me tips on how to fit in. You might have forgotten, but I haven't." Sarah was stunned. She remembered now. At the time, she thought it was just a small act of kindness for a new employee. She never imagined that the seed of goodwill she had planted would grow into a mighty tree, sheltering her in a storm. "Thank you. Get some rest. We have a lot to do tomorrow. Tiffany won't stop here." Daniel left, and the door clicked shut. Sarah lay down but couldn't sleep. She opened her phone and went to her Facebook page. Alongside the supportive messages, a new wave of vicious comments had appeared, digging into her private life, fabricating stories about her having an affair with Daniel and framing her husband. And she knew exactly who was behind the fake accounts. In a dark corner of the city, in a cheap motel room, Tiffany was typing furiously, her hair a mess, her eyes bloodshot and crazed. "You may have escaped, Sal, but you can't escape public opinion, Sarah. I will turn you into the most shameless, cheating witch in this entire state. If I go down, you're coming down with me." Beside her, Mark was curled up under the covers, shivering from withdrawal and fear. He mumbled in his sleep, "Sarah, save me." Tiffany heard him and shot a look of pure contempt in his direction. She spit on the floor. "Useless fool, just you wait, I'll send both of you to hell." The war wasn't over. It had just shifted from a direct confrontation to something more insidious, psychological warfare and the destruction of her reputation. And Sarah knew that to win against these vultures, she couldn't just defend, she had to become the hunter. The weak morning sun filtered through the gray curtains of the luxury apartment. Sarah woke up with a pounding headache after a night of fitful sleep, plagued by nightmares of baseball bats and Tiffany's manic laughter. She reached for her phone, a professional habit. But today, the news was her. The moment she opened Facebook, a flood of notifications hit her. The tide had turned. A new wave of outrage was cresting, but this time, it was directed at her. A long, rambling post from a fake account called The Burlington Truth, accompanied by cleverly edited photos, had gone viral. The headline, "Shocking plot twist. Scorned wife is the real villain. Affair with IT director, framed husband to steal assets." The article painted a completely different picture. It claimed Sarah and Daniel had been having an affair for months. The innocent Mark, too trusting of his wife, was pushed into Tiffany's arms by Sarah's coldness. The post alleged that Sarah orchestrated the entire video scandal to humiliate her husband, force a divorce, steal their assets, and clear the way to be with Daniel. The proof was a blurry photo taken the previous night showing Daniel helping a distraught Sarah into the condo building. The angle made his supportive gesture look like a romantic embrace. Thousands of comments poured in. "Wow, she looks so innocent, but she's pure evil." So they were both cheating. And she played the victim card. Poor husband, lost his job and his wife. The mistress was probably just a pawn in her game. Boycott North Star Media. What a toxic workplace. Sarah read every word. She didn't cry. Instead, a cold fury ignited in her chest, burning away any lingering weakness. Tiffany didn't just want to destroy her. She wanted to drag Daniel, her savior, down with her. This level of depravity was beyond human decency. The doorbell rang. It was Daniel, holding 2 containers of breakfast burritos and a coffee carrier. His face was as calm as ever, but his eyes were serious. "You saw the news," he said as he walked in. "I saw," Sarah replied, her voice like ice. "She must have had someone follow us from the cafe last night." "More than that," Daniel said, setting breakfast on the counter and opening his laptop. "I just traced the IP address of that Burlington Truth account. It originated from a cheap motel downtown. And guess what? The burner phone number used to activate the account matches a number Tiffany used for client calls a few months back." He gestured to the food. "Eat something. These are the best burritos in town. I'll handle the online trash." Sarah looked at the man furiously typing away on her behalf and shook her head. "No, Daniel. You've done too much. This time, I can't let you take the heat from me. They're attacking your reputation to get to me. I have to handle this myself." She sat down across from him, her eyes blazing. "Can you help me set up a makeshift studio right here? I want to go live. Not to defend myself. To declare war." A small, appreciative smile touched Daniel's lips. He admired her strength. This wasn't bravado. It was the courage of someone pushed to the edge who had decided to fight back. "Done. I'll set you up with the best streaming equipment and a secure connection, and I'll moderate the comments for you. But what are you going to say?" Sarah took a sip of the bitter black coffee, her eyes dark and deep. "I'm going to give them the truth. Not a piece of it, all of it, including that forged loan agreement." 8 p.m. Prime time for social media. On Sarah Miller's personal Facebook page, which had been silent for 2 days, a live stream suddenly began. The title, "To Tiffany, Mark, and those hiding in the shadows, I'm ready to talk." Within 5 minutes, the viewer count skyrocketed past 10,000, then 20,000. The entire city of Burlington seemed to be watching. Sarah appeared on screen. She wasn't disheveled or teary-eyed. She wore a simple but elegant black dress, her hair pulled back neatly, her makeup sharp and professional. She exuded an aura of power and grace. "Good evening, everyone. I am Sarah Miller," she began, her voice steady and clear. "For the past 2 days, I have been silent. I was silent because I believed that after the truth was revealed at my company, those who did wrong would feel remorse, or at least have the decency to stop. I was wrong. To show mercy to the wicked is to be cruel to oneself." She held up a thick file. "Today, there are rumors that I had an affair, that I framed my husband to steal his assets. So, let's talk about assets." Sarah held up the forged $100,000 loan agreement to the camera. Daniel, operating the camera, zoomed in. "This is a loan agreement for $100,000, with an exorbitant interest rate, signed 3 months ago. The borrower is my husband, Mark Miller, and the co-signer, ironically, is me, with a signature I never wrote." The comments section exploded. "Oh my God, he forged her signature for $100K? That's serious jail time. So the husband was the one drowning in debt and tried to frame her." Sarah continued, her voice gaining strength. "Where did this money go? It wasn't invested. It was used to fuel an online sports betting addiction and to buy luxury gifts for his young mistress, the same person who is playing the victim on social media today." She displayed a bank statement that Daniel had recovered from Mark's unsecured cloud account. January 14th, a $50,000 wire transfer. Memo: Louis Vuitton bag for my kitten. Kitten is Tiffany Jones's nickname. January 20th, a $20,000 wire transfer. MO: VIP account top-up. And the climax. Yesterday, as I left my husband's home with nothing but the clothes on my back, I was ambushed by a group of thugs who threatened my life to collect this very debt that I knew nothing about. Sarah played the dashcam footage from Daniel's truck, the scene of Scarface Sal with his baseball bat, of her own terrified face inside the car, was raw and terrifyingly real. "You say I'm having an affair with Daniel Evans." Yes, he was there, not for a date. He and my lawyer were there to save my life from the debt collectors that my own husband and his mistress sicked on me. She looked directly into the camera, her gaze piercing. "Mark, Tiffany, I know you're watching. Do you think you can destroy me with fake accounts and public opinion? You are mistaken. I am not a candle flickering in the wind. I am a wildfire. The more you try to blow me out, the bigger I will burn." And this is my final warning. I have submitted all evidence of the forgery, the slander, and the death threats to the police. Warrants for your arrest will be issued tomorrow. Enjoy your last few hours of freedom." Sarah ended the live stream with a decisive act. She took her framed wedding photo and tore it in half, right in front of the camera. "Our marriage is over. From now on, we'll see each other in court." The screen went black. Sarah sank into the sofa, letting out a long, shuddering breath. Daniel handed her a glass of water. "You were amazing. What do you think they'll do now?" Sarah asked, her eyes distant. "They'll turn on each other," Daniel said. "It's what cornered rats always do." In the dingy motel room, Mark and Tiffany stared at the blank phone screen. The silence was suffocating. "We're dead! We're dead!" Mark finally broke the silence, throwing the phone against the wall. "She has the forged signature. She called the cops." He grabbed his head, rocking back and forth like a madman. He knew the penalties for fraud were severe, not to mention the $100,000 debt to Sal, which Sarah had now publicly disowned. Sal would not be merciful. Tiffany sat huddled in a corner, her face ashen. Her smear campaign had backfired spectacularly. Public opinion had flipped, and now the internet was flooded with venomous curses for the home-wrecking mistress and her cowardly lover. "This is all your fault." Mark lunged at Tiffany, shaking her violently. "You told me to take out the loan. You said we'd flip that property and double our money. Now the money's gone, spent on your clothes and bags, and you sent Sal after her. You've ruined me." "Let go of me," Tiffany shrieked, clawing at him. "You're the pathetic one. You enjoyed the money when it was flowing. You're the one who wanted her dead so you could collect the life insurance." Smack! Mark's slap sent Tiffany reeling, her head hitting the bed frame. Blood trickled down her forehead. But she didn't cry. Her eyes were feral. She grabbed a fruit knife from the nightstand and pointed it at him. "You hit me again, I'll kill you. We're both going down anyway. I'll take you with me." The room descended into chaos. The two people who had once whispered promises to each other were now at each other's throats. Bang, bang, bang. A thunderous pounding on the door made them both freeze. "Police, open up!" But it wasn't the police. Mark recognized the voice instantly. It was one of Sal's men. Sal had seen the live stream. He knew the money was gone, and more importantly, he knew where they were. "Mikey, Tiffany, open up. Heard you two were trying to skip out on your tab." The flimsy door shuddered under the force of the kicks. Mark looked at the window. 3rd floor. A jump would mean broken bones. Staying would mean something worse. "The balcony! We can climb over to the next room," Tiffany whispered, scrambling toward it. Mark followed, but the rain had made the railing slippery. His hands trembled. Crash! The door burst open. Sal and 3 of his men stormed in. Seeing his 2 debtors dangling from the balcony, Sal chuckled and sat down, lighting a cigarette. "Let 'em climb. If they fall, saves me the trouble. I'll just call a garbage truck to pick 'em up." Mark looked down at the dark alley below, then back at the predators waiting in the room. He was filled with utter despair. His life, as he knew it, was over. The next morning, Burlington awoke to shocking news. A brawl at a downtown motel had ended with 2 individuals being taken to the hospital with multiple injuries after falling from a 2nd-story roof while fleeing a group of debt collectors. At the hospital, Mark lay in a bed, his leg and arm in casts, his face swollen and bruised. Tiffany was in the adjacent bed with a broken leg and severe contusions. But their physical pain was nothing compared to the documents a police officer placed on their bedside tables. Warrants for their immediate arrest, to be served as soon as they were medically stable. Mark was charged with felony fraud and forgery. Tiffany was charged as an accomplice, with additional charges of slander and harassment. Sarah stood in the hospital corridor, looking through the glass window at them. She wore a simple beige trench coat, looking elegant and composed. "Do you want to go in and say anything?" Mr. Davis asked, standing beside her. Sarah looked at the 2 bandaged figures moaning in their beds. The hatred had vanished, replaced by a strange sense of peace. She didn't feel triumphant, only a deep sadness for people who had destroyed themselves with their own greed and malice. "There's no need." Sarah shook her head, a small smile playing on her lips. "I said everything I needed to say on the live stream." Now, they're just defendants in a case where I am the plaintiff. I don't make a habit of talking to criminals." She turned and walked away, the sound of her heels clicking rhythmically on the linoleum floor. Her phone buzzed. It was a text from Daniel. "All done? I'm waiting at the entrance. The weather is beautiful today. How about we go get some crepes by the lake?" Sarah looked out the window. The rain had stopped. The sky over Burlington was a brilliant, clear blue. "Yes. I'm on my way out," Sarah texted back, her steps quickening toward the exit. She had won. She had reclaimed her dignity, protected her assets, and most importantly, she had found herself again a stronger, wiser version. But there was one last thing she had to do to close this chapter. A meeting she had been dreading, her former in-laws. They had to be faced, not out of spite, but to finally and completely sever the ties of her old life. 3 months later, spring in Vermont had given way to the brilliant sun of early summer. Today was the day of sentencing. Sarah walked out of the courthouse, taking a deep breath of the free, warm air. The verdict was as expected. Mark Miller was sentenced to 7 years in prison for fraud and forgery. He was also held solely responsible for the $100,000 debt. Tiffany Jones received 2 years of probation for her role as an accomplice and for slander. Her reputation in the small city was irrevocably destroyed. "It's over, Sarah," Mr. Davis said, shaking her hand. "The divorce is finalized. You're a free woman." "Thank you for everything," Sarah said, her eyes full of sincere gratitude. She saw the prison transport van waiting. Through the barred window, she caught a glimpse of Mark's hollow, defeated eyes. He looked at her, not with hatred, but with a deep, soul-crushing regret. Sarah felt nothing. He was just a stranger now, an expensive lesson learned. "Where to now? Back to the office for a celebration?" Daniel asked, waiting for her under a blooming maple tree. Sarah shook her head. "I have one last thing to do. A final goodbye." She drove back to Maple Street one last time. The house looked desolate. Her former in-laws looked as if they had aged a decade. Seeing Sarah, Helen burst into tears and fell to her knees, begging Sarah to help Mark, to ask for a lighter sentence. Sarah stood tall. She gently but firmly helped the older woman to her feet. "Helen," she said, her voice soft but resolute, "I am not his judge. The law is. He has to take responsibility for his actions. I have been through my own hell because of him. I cannot save him from the consequences he created. I wish you both peace, but my journey with your family is over." She placed the old house key on the table and walked out without looking back. The sun was bright on her face. She felt light, untethered, and free. Back at North Star Media, Sarah walked into a strategy meeting. The entire room broke into spontaneous, thunderous applause. In the wake of the scandal, Sarah's reputation had soared. She was seen as a symbol of strength and integrity. She had been promoted to Director of Content Development. "Welcome, Director Miller." The young intern from that fateful morning, now a full-time employee, greeted her with a beaming smile. Sarah smiled back and took her seat at the head of the table. "Thank you, everyone. Let's begin. Today, I want to pitch a new campaign, Women and the Power of Self-Reliance. I want to use my own story to inspire others." As she spoke, she radiated a beauty that came not from makeup, but from a deep, unshakable sense of self-worth. In the corner of the room, Daniel watched her, his heart full. The fire in her, once nearly extinguished, was now burning brighter than ever. That evening, they stood on the summit of Mount Mansfield, overlooking the city as the sun set, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. Daniel had built a small fire, and they were roasting marshmallows. "Sarah," he began, his voice soft, "I've waited a long time for this day. The day you were free from all of it, the day your smile reached your eyes again." "Daniel, I'm divorced. I have a messy past," she started, but he gently took her hand. "I don't love your past, Sarah. I love you. I love the woman who stood up, who fought back, who survived. Your scars don't make you ugly. They prove you're a fighter." He pulled out a small box. Inside wasn't a diamond ring, but a simple silver bracelet with a single charm, a tiny, flickering flame. "I can't promise you a perfect life," he said, but I promise to walk beside you, to be your partner. Will you let me?" Tears welled in Sarah's eyes, but they were tears of joy. She had once thought she would never trust a man again, but this man had shown her what true partnership looked like. "I don't need you to promise me the world," she whispered, her smile as bright as the rising sun. "Just promise to walk with me." He slid the bracelet onto her wrist and pulled her into a gentle embrace. Under the vast, starry Vermont sky, two lonely souls found solace in each other. A year later, Sarah stood on the stage at the Women of Influence annual awards gala, accepting the top honor. She wore a stunning crimson gown, the color of a phoenix rising from the ashes. In the audience, Daniel held their newborn daughter, smiling up at her with pure adoration. "Before I stood here tonight," Sarah began, her voice ringing with confidence, "I was a woman who had lost everything. I was betrayed on Valentine's Day. I was humiliated and pushed to the edge. I thought my life was over. But the bottom of the abyss is not a place to die. It is a place from which to push off. We, as women, were not born to be shadows or to endure pain in the name of sacrifice. A husband can betray you, the world can judge you, but as long as you do not betray yourself, you will always find a way forward. Don't be afraid to break what is already broken. Because only by letting go of what hurts you can you free your hands to embrace the beautiful things that are waiting." The hall erupted in a standing ovation. Sarah looked at Daniel, who gave her a thumbs up, his eyes shining with love. She smiled. Outside, a new day was dawning over Burlington, more brilliant and beautiful than ever before. Her life was just beginning.